Good morning, everyone. Um, all I really want to do today is just look at the Hakol mode and She'nosin al Arabic Tchila. I don't know how long it will take us. So it may be a short show or not. We'll see. So just to revisit, I understood from some people that they haven't actually seen this last year. So I'll just briefly go over the comments that we made on Rashi, and then we'll try and look at Tosfos. Rashi, as we have it in our print, has a slightly complicated understanding of Rabbi Yochanan. So Rabbi Yochanan is looking at the Mishnah. The Mishnah says that Kak Hachaloin is a machlokas Rabbi Lazar and the Chachamim, and Rabbi Yochanan comes to explain this machlokas between Rabbi Lazar and the Chachamim, and Rabbi Yochanan links it to a machlokas about whether oisin oil arai b'tchila or not. Now, what is the halacha of oisin arai b'tchila? And the halacha of oisin arai. So Rashi learns that there's no issa of oisin oil arai unless it is a gag. And our Mishnah is not talking about a gag; it's talking about kachaloin, which is a wall. You have a window in a wall, and you're talking about blocking the wall or not blocking the wall. So what's the link that Rabbi Yochanan is making between a halacha about whether you can... So Rabbi Yochanan is telling us a halacha, which is true, it makes its way into Shulchan Aruch also, that if an oil arai is min haTorah not chayav, because a melacha needs a certain kashiva, so it has to be an oil keva, but midrabanon an oil arai is asa, and heim omru, and they were makel if it's a tosefes, if you're just adding to the oil arai. That, as Rashi is talking about, where it's an oihel, where it's a gag. But if it's a mechitza, Rashi understands this halacha doesn't apply. So what's the dimion that Rabbi Yochanan is making? What comparison is he making? The answer is he's making a comparison to a completely separate halacha. There is no issa in making an oil, a mechitza arai on Shabbos, according to Rashi. However, when you're adding to a binyan keva, there is an issa to add to a binyan keva, even an arai addition. Even though it's a mechitza, not a gag, but nonetheless, since it's a binyan keva, it looks more like a proper addition if you're adding to binyan keva, and therefore there's a separate issa drabanon to add to an arai addition to a binyan keva. And Rabbi Yochanan is conceptually comparing the two, and he's saying that it makes sense that the same chiluk that applies to any oyhel arai when it's an oyhel, when it's a gag, would also apply to this unique halacha of a mechitza being added to binyan keva, and therefore you'd have the same machlokas Rabbi Lezer and Rabbanon about to be mechalik between tosefes or whether you're making it from the start. That's how Rashi in our Girsa learns the sugya. I hope by now that's reasonably familiar with everyone. A mechitza is a wall as opposed to a roof. Not necessarily, no. Correct. Yes. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Any division or partition to delineate space is a mechitza. And therefore, if we were to put a mechitza down the middle of this room, the explanation would be we're splitting it into two rooms or two zones, and therefore, again, that would be a mechitza. Yeah. Okay, so that's Rashi in our Girsa. Rashi in the Marshal's Girsa, which is brought in the new prints on the side, but if not, have a look at the Marshal at the back of the Gemara. The Marshal has the Girsa that Rashi's answer is different. That here we're talking about a pekak of a pekak of a roof chaloin, a skylight. Yeah, exactly like in here, and you're being pokake the skylight, and that's what's going on. Either way, whatever the Girsa is in front of us, there's two things to say. The first is it's definite that Shittas Rashi is that there isn't a prohibition of making a mechitzas arai, generally speaking. There's only a prohibition of oihel arai, that's the view of Rashi. And the second thing is, there are Rashis elsewhere in Shas in which he says a similar thing. So whatever the doubt about the Girsas in Rashi, this is definitely the sort of well-known view of Rashi, that there's no issa of making a mechitzas arai, only an issa of making an oil arai. And we don't paskin like that. We paskin like Tosfos who argues on that. So that's that we'll see now. Okay, so Tosfos asks on Rashi a question from the Gemara in HaEven, which ushers making a doifen sukkah. So that's talking about a mechitza not a gug. And nonetheless, the Gemara says, and it's arai, it's a sukkah, and nonetheless, the Gemara says that would be asa on Shabbos. So that's the whole nidin there. So that's Tosas's kasha on Rashi. The carbon nasanel, maybe I should have printed it, maybe I'll put it on the WhatsApp group just as a Maramakim. Very interesting. He is medayik from Rashi. I don't know if anyone, I assume, did people look up the sukkah there? So maybe you saw this also. By the way, general derech halimud, whenever Tosas quotes a Gemara, you have to always look up the sukkah. It's almost impossible to understand from the sort of 5 words that Tosas quotes from the Gemara what's really going on. And it's always really, really important to look up the sukkah, or to say, look, it's such a long sukkah, I don't understand, in which case skip Tosas, but not to think that one can do a Tosas without looking up properly. So if you look there at Rashi, the carbon nasanel has a beautiful diuk in the language of Rashi, and a lot of concepts to think about, in which he understands that he says the following point, that the oil that you're making through building the doif and sukkah is the oil of the schach. In other words, the schach was irrelevant, an irrelevant oil when the sukkah only had 2 tefonos. Why? Because the sukkah was possible. You build your 3rd doifen, now the oihel of the schach becomes halachically significant, and that's the oihel that you're doing. Very interesting, very, very interesting concept. Very beautiful diuk of the carbon nasanel in Rashi. Excuse me, sorry? Okay, could be. Maybe not. It's an idun whether that's the case. But either way, here you're making the schach kosher by making the or schach relevant by making by doing by making the doif and shlishi. Very interesting concept. Okay.
So it's there already.
Yes, yeah, and we'll get back to that particular later also. But yes, yeah. Okay, so that's the first Gemara. That's I'm going a bit out of order here, but that's one Gemara. Then there's the Gemara in HaEven Tzadi Daled Amud Aleph that Rashi brings and that Tosas discusses, which is the memra of Shmuel. And here we get to something. So just to summarize what we've said so far, we have a Gemara that talks about doifen sukkah. The simplest understanding of the Gemara is that the mechitza is by making the doifen, which is a kasha on Rashi, a knockout blow on Rashi. You see clearly that making a doifen is a problem. Carbon nasanel is medayik in Rashi, that through making the doifen, you're making the schach into an oil. If you just have a schach there, it's irrelevant. And if it gets a doifen, it now becomes, the he'olah of the schach becomes relevant. The schach acting as an oil now becomes relevant. Very interesting idea. Okay, then we have the next Gemara, which is the Gemara of Shmuel. So I don't want to go too much into the nitty-gritty of the Shakratari there, but basically Rav challenges Shmuel about Shmuel made a mechitza in order to allow carrying, and the Gemara there's a discussion about whether this mechitza is necessary to carry or not. And the simplest understanding, Rashi says, of the Gemara is that that Shmuel, the Gemara is saying that I have a question, why did Shmuel need to build the mechitza? But were Shmuel to have needed the mechitza, I'd have understood that he built it. It's not a problem of building a mechitzas arai in order to allow carrying in an area. That's Rashi's raya. Tosas answers the raya. We're now going all the way to the end of Tosas. That no, the Gemara is simply asking one question on Shmuel, but had it needed to, it could have asked another question on Shmuel. The Gemara is asking why does Shmuel need to build the mechitza. And if we would agree with Shmuel that you were right in needing to build a mechitza, then we would also ask, how can you build a mechitza materes? That's how Tosas mathematically work. You can see where Rashi, it's a question a bit of Tosas. It's the simplest understanding is like Rashi. The Gemara is not bothered about the building of the mechitza. It's simply questioning the necessity of the building. It's a Gemara about Hilchas carrying, not Hilchas mechitza. Nonetheless, Tosas says that who are doing the Gemara we got up to there. The Gemara also questions the legitimacy of building mechitza at all because of the halacha of boina on Shabbos. Because again, there's an issue of building mechitzas ara on Shabbos. That's the shakratari of the Gemara there. Either way, the view of Tosas and Roiv Rishonim, it's so far so good. Did everyone? That's a fair summary of what Tosas says based on these two Gemaras. Yeah, Adam, you're looking perplexed.
No, it's fine. I'm just saying we went through the whole Gemara, so we haven't actually got through the whole of
okay, fine,
so
yeah.
It takes a long time.
Yeah. I was thinking, I'll tell you the truth, I was thinking of not doing the Shiur today because I knew it would take a lot of time, but I want to keep the Shiur going and yeah. It's fair. It is a fair comment. Okay. That is a fair response. So we'll review then whether we'll do Shiur on Tuesday or not if people need time to catch up. But okay. Then Then we have. I did say today might be a short share because, to be honest, I also struggled with preparing and getting there on time because it's a lot of material to plow through. But I didn't want to cancel share. So to summarize, we have Shittas Tosus, which I didn't give my Makomis because we have enough to do, but it's the Shitta of Roiv Rishonim, who hold that you are not allowed to make a Mechitza Arai on Shabbos, even a Mechitza Arai. But Tosus says, the Rishonim say that's where it's Materes. Very, very interesting idea. And this is, by the way, how we paskin, that a mechitzas arai on Shabbos, which has significance, halachic significance, you're not allowed to do on Shabbos. The logic is that if you're just sliding mechitza in place and it's arai, that's not a melacha. But if that creates a new halachic space, then that would be deemed if the mechitza, if the delineation of the area into a separate area has halachic significance, then that would be also on Shabbos. So we paskin that mechitzas arai hamateres is also on Shabbos. That's what comes out from Tosus. So let's just define what mechitzas arai hamateres is. So one example is a sukkah. We'll come on to exactly what it means, but basically a third wall of a sukkah, yeah? So a wall which delineates this area as a sukkah, even though it's in the arai, you're not allowed to do on Shabbos. Again, I want you to understand the logic. The logic is the mechitzas arai is nothing. Why should it be malacha? It's arai. The answer is if it creates a new space, that mechitza has a chashivas, and therefore chazal asad that midrabanon. So mechitzas arai materes is also on Shabbos. So if it makes a new space like a sukkah, it would be asa. If it makes a new domain like Rosh Hashanah on Shabbos, it would be asa, because again, a mechitza means a space delineator, and it would be asa. If you have a Sefer Torah, for example, in a room, a couple are not allowed to be intimate in that room. But if you build a mechitza, then that delineates that into a separate space, and then you are allowed to be intimate in the room. So again, that would be a mechitza, that would be asa on Shabbos. Those are some of the examples that's given. What is not called a mechitza materes on Shabbos is, for example, a shul mechitza between ladies and men who are davening. And the reason is because there's no halacha that they have to be in a separate room. Even though we call it a mechitza in a shul, the mechitza is not delineating a separate space. You need a barrier. So it's not delineating a space. A mechitza is, Gary asked what happens if you have a mechitza that's not external but in the middle of a room. And the answer is, by definition, as soon as you have a mechitza down the middle of the room, it's external because it's creating two rooms. A mechitza in a shul does not need to create two rooms. There's no halacha that men and women can't have it in the same room. All it needs to do is separate ensure that they are davening in a separated manner with some degree of visual minimizing. You don't find halachas of mechitzas where there has to be a oimed ruach mitzuyah, right? So a mechitza of a sukkah has to have a certain stability to it. Then there's such a halacha with a mechitza of a shul. It can be a hanging curtain or whatever, according to generally accepted halacha. So it's not delineating as carving out a separate room. There's no halacha that needs to carve it out, and therefore not a mechitza materes. It's not being mati anything in that sense of the word. And there's other ways of understanding it, but this is the mainstream way of understanding it, which is why on Shabbos we can move our mechitzas and set them up on Shabbos and so on. Okay, so that's shittas tosus, that a mechitza materes is also, whereas a mechitza which is not a mechitza materes is mutter. Yeah.
This isn't a question necessarily linked to the sugya now, but just what you said. So are you saying that in terms of mechitza, do exactly the same maseh, that the two different kavanot, and one is asur and one is mutter?
Correct. Yes. Yeah. Or two different halachic effects, invisible halachic effects. Yes. Yeah. That's what comes out from Tosus.
You're saying about tarek, is that
Lahatir, to create a hatter. Yes. Yeah, a mechitza which creates a mutter space where something was asa. So it was asa to carry, now it's mutter. It wasn't a sukkah, now it is a sukkah. It was asa for a couple to be intimate because of the Sefer Torah, now it's mutter. Yeah, materet.
If you have to intend to be creating.
Yes. Yeah.
Splitting up something that you didn't actually want to do.
Correct. If I want to put a mechitza for davening, and it so happens that creates the sukkah, but there's no intention of doing that, I don't plan to create a kosher sukkah, they've got no interest in that, then yeah, that'd be mutter again. Yeah. Okay, so that's what comes out from Tosus. I apologize because I can see that Adam's horror that people haven't seen Tosus completely yet is I'm happy to stop here and carry on Tuesday if people prefer to prepare or. Yeah, this is okay. So we'll do this, and then on Tuesday we'll review whether there's a share on Tuesday, or I'll give people a chance to catch up. Okay, what's the lomdus of mechitza materes, which will also affect the halacha and ma'isa? So there's two ways of understanding it, which come out with considerable halachic difference. The simplest way of understanding Tosus is that materes really is another way of saying a mechitza mitzchila. So the Gemara says that you can be mosif on a mechitza, but not create a new mechitza. So Tosfos seems to understand that the simplest way of understanding Tosfos' language is that by definition, if the mechitza is creating a new zone, that's called a new mechitza, not the continuation of an old mechitza. The lomdus of an old mechitza that you're just being mosif to, and this gets to your point when you mentioned third wall, the lomdus of a mechitza of just being mosif is you anyway have the division between the two areas, you're merely extending the division. But if the new mechitza creates a new halachic zone, then by definition, that's a new mechitza, not just an extension. It's true that physically, I might merely be extending a mechitza by a tefach. I have a 6 tefachim, and I extend it to make a 7th tefach in order to make the sukkah kosher. But nonetheless, this is not called an extension of mechitza, it's called creating a new mechitza. Because until now, I didn't have a dofen sukkah, and now I've got a dofen sukkah, that is materes. So that's one way of understanding it. That when Tosfos introduces these chilukim about whether it has a halachic effect or not, he doesn't mean to introduce a new lomdus, that if a mechitza is materes, it has a significance in its own right because it's materes and therefore it's asa, like a new drabonon that mechitza materes is asa. That's how he understood the concept of Tosefes versus a new mechitza. Tosefes means my mechitza is already there doing everything it needs to do. I'm simply extending it. Whereas a new mechitza means it has new. It's not by definition. It's not a tosefet. It's not an addition. It's a new mechitza if it has new halachic effect. So that's the simplest way of understanding how Tosfos explains the concept of mechitza materes. Yeah.
This is motivation was privacy. Therefore, it's not mechitza matera.
Correct. Yes. Yes.
That's the logic.
That's right. That's exactly right. Yes. Yes. So there you can ask yourself, is it extended or is it new? If it's new, it'd be asa. If it's merely an extension, that would be mutter. Exactly right. Yeah. Okay, so let's just summarize Tosfos' view. According to Tosfos, there is one halachic principle, which is new versus extended. Materet is, a mechitza materet is merely another way of making it defined as a new mechitza. So la halacha, if you have a new mechitza that has no halachic implication, but it's new, that would be asa. If you have an extension of a mechitza which has halachic impact, that's equivalent to a new mechitza, and it would be also asa. If you have an extension of mechitza with no halachic impact, that's just an extension, and that's what our Gemara says, that that's mutter, according to the Chachamim. That's summary of Tosfos.
So in some cases, a mechitza has significance because it's part of a binyan. In other cases, it can still, like in the world of HaEven, can have significance even without being part of it.
Where do you see part of a binyan as relevant? In Tosfos, not in Rashi.
I just think to give the sukkah, because the mechitza turned that structure into a ohel. So I'd say sometimes the mechitza creates this ohel, doesn't it? Sometimes it has status because of just as the mechitza.
You're right in what you're saying, but in Tosfos' worldview, I don't think that's a significant distinction. Rashi says, because you're adding the mechitza, now it makes, for example, the schach significant. Tosfos is saying something different. Tosfos is saying that the mechitza carries its own significance. You're right, it's because it's attached to other things. But the point is that now when I build the third wall, that mechitza is something new springing into life. Why is it something new springing into life? Because it's materes. So you just need to ask yourself the question, this mechitza here in front of me, is it new or is it an extension? If it's physically new, it's new. If it's physically an extension, but in so building it, something new happens halachically, that's also a new mechitza. So you're right, there's a number of scenarios, each one is different, but those chilukim are not important in Tosfos' worldview. The simple question is this mechitza materet or not? If it is materes, if it's materet, then it's called a new mechitza. Yeah.
I thought it's when the Tosfos says the fourth rule is allowed with the sukkah.
Yes.
That could be even a completely new full wall.
Yes.
So how could you say that making a new wall is
because he views that merely as a tosefes. It's an extension of existing mechitzas with no halachic significance, and therefore that's called a mosif.
Only because it's attached.
Yes,
to
yes, correct. Yeah.
Be a separate
yes,
wall,
yeah, correct.
Oh.
Yeah. Okay, so this is Tosfos' understanding. Again, maybe I should have printed the source, perhaps I'll put it on the WhatsApp group. The Ramah, however, who paskins ostensibly like, sorry, I shouldn't say this is Tosfos' understanding, that's unfair. This is the simplest way of reading Tosfos. The Ramah, however, who ostensibly paskins like Tosfos, like his view of Tosfos and the Rishonim, has a different way of understanding this concept. And the Ramah understands that the whole Issa of Tosefes Mechitza, of adding to a Mechitza, is only when it's a Mechitza Materet. So let me just explain what that means in crystal clear terms. The simplest way of understanding is that Tosfos says that any Tosefet Mechitza is Osa. Anytime you're adding, start again. Anytime you're adding to a Mechitza, it's Mutter. Any new Mechitza is Osa. And there are two ways for a Mechitza to be deemed new, either physically new or Materet, which is another route to getting new. So in that worldview, if you have a physically new Mechitza, it would be Osa, even though it's not Materet, because it's physically new. Materet is important because it's another way of having a new Mechitza, even though it's ostensibly an extension. But if I have a physically new Mechitza, the Lomdos of Materet is coming to add Isurim, not to reduce Isurim. It's saying this is another route to this being considered a new Mechitza. The Ramah, however, passes differently. The Ramah adds that the whole Issa of an Oyel Arai is only when it's a Mechitza Materet. So that which we make a chiluk between a new Mechitza and an extension of Mechitza is all in the worldview of Materet. So or to put that in practical halachic terms, if I make a new Mechitza that's not Materet, but since it's Arai, it wouldn't be Osa. So the Ramah understands as far as Tosfos the Kula, that we only say that it is Osa to extend to create a new Mechitza if it is we only say it's Osa to create a new Mechitza if it is Materet, but not if it is not Materet. That's how the Ramah understands this view, and therefore since this is the Ramah, this is how we paskin, that you are allowed to create an Oyel Arai if it is not Materet. But I'll give you the Halacha and Maisa Makoros a little bit clearer for Tuesday, so that we come out with the Maisa practical Halacha clearly. Yeah.
Give you an example of physically new on the basis of what we asked about the fourth Mechitza. Why that is, you're saying not a physically new. So what example?
Like Tosfos says it's not physically new. It could be other places can hold it's physically new. But let's say I'm just putting I don't know, children are playing a game and there's a wire stretched across a room and they decide to make they spread a sheet over it. Not a gag, just a mechitza. Arai, it's arai. It's not materet, it's new mutter. So you have a washing line strung across a thing and children spread a sheet across it to play for it. Or another example, but Tosfos would say new mechitza so osa, even though it's not materet, it's just being done with tzniut. They want to hide behind the thing. Ramah says mutter because it's a mechitza, it's not a gag. It's arai. True, it's new. You made it from nothing, but nonetheless, it's not materet, and therefore it would be mutter. The children a tablecloth. They spread a very large tablecloth over, and they like making little tent underneath. So they're not making a gag because the table was always there. They're making just this side wall, which is a mechitza. It's arai, and therefore it would be mutter, even though it's new. That's just a status. Okay. The final ha'ara I'll say, and then I'll stop here, is according to the Ramah, I don't really know how to read the Gemara of Pakak anymore. What's the case of Pakak Kachaloin? The Pakak is a mechitza in simple understanding, and it is arai, and it's not materet. So l'chora it should be mutter. You'd have to say that Tosfos would say that we're talking about, again, a gag. This view would have to say, again, we're talking about a skylight mechaloin rather than a side chaloin. So it's interesting that we get back to that according to the Ramah's halacha. Yes, but the Mishna doesn't specify that. Yeah. So you'd have to say again that in this reading, for different reasons to last time, we're talking about a gag bekak. Very interesting.
Permanent structure, there's a difference.
Oh, or the other gears of Rashi, that since it's permanent and you often the post can add a bit more and you often leave the pekak in long term, that there's not really a case of arai. But you have to say it's funny, Tosfos, the start of Tosfos' journey was to avoid needing to say Rashi's hechatimtzas. They were dafka talking about a skylight pekak, or we're dafka talking about something different because it's semi-permanent, it's not your classic case of arai. And in the Ramah's reading of this halacha, you get back to having to say that Pekat Kalon is an exception, is something different. It's just, again, an interesting point.
In a sense that all of this discussion rises out of the word batchila, because otherwise you wouldn't all of these discussions about what is
100%. But chila is the key word over here. We're talking about Oyel Arai. Oyel Arai is mutter min haTorah, it's not the melachot min midoraisa, because it's not an Oyel Keva. And the critical word is what's the get of batchila. So Rashi learns the whole Issa B'Tchila is only a gag. Tosfos learns B'Tchila is also the way we read Tosfos. The simplest reading of Tosfos is that the Tchila is also unless Tchila is also stam, and if it's materet, that's another way of getting to Tchila. And the Ramah learns that Tchila is only also when it's materes. Pekak. So funnily enough, according to the Ramah, you need to get back to back to Rashi's or analogous to Rashi of Pekak. Yeah. Okay, so we'll stop here. I will later post on the group. I should have probably done this, the Carbon and Salad and the Ramah. I'm not going to post other Marim comments because we're overloaded enough with material. And then we'll talk off group about whether to give a share on Tuesday or to allow time to finish stuff. Thank you very much.